Well, good morning, First Presbyterian Church. I'm so glad you could be here for Sunday school. As you think about what it is you're going to teach, I had that question often, what do I want to teach for Sunday school? And I thought I might as well take a page from someone who is much wiser than I am. So I thought about, how does Bill Jolly do it? Well, Bill always takes a text from the lectionary, and that's what he uses. And so I thought, let's try that. So our text today is John chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. And we'll walk through that and take a look at that and see how unique this story is compared to the story that we have been looking at for this last month, which was really centered on both Isaiah and then the Lucan gospel. So, John chapter 1, beginning at verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I'll stop there because there's so much right there to begin with. We know these words well. I mean, this is one of the greatest preludes of any piece of writing ever, a preface, I should say. But let's look at it a little bit more. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This is one of those interesting ideas where word means one thing to Greeks and another thing to Jews. And, of course, they live in a world where there's shared meanings, of course. They're part of the Greco-Roman world, the Hellenistic world. And so these two words talk to each other. So for the Jews, the word is logos. And what is logos? Logos is the thinking, the reasoning behind it all. It's many, many years later when Descartes put forward that proposition. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Well, in the Greek understanding and then the Roman understanding, this reason is really the word above every word, the thing that is true for everything in this world. So that's their understanding of word. Now, for the Hebrews, they understood the word in terms of, well, for one thing, the law. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet. So there's that kind of understanding. But there's even another kind of understanding, and we really see it when we look at the book of Proverbs. There in the book of Proverbs, it is wisdom, which is God's word. And wisdom, if you recall, comes down to earth and is looking for those who will follow it. And wisdom is rejected by many, but for the wise, they take it in. So both these meanings of word come together in these verses. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Here's something else. In Genesis, in the beginning, God created the earth. It begins with the creation of the earth. This begins prior to the creation of the earth. He was with God in the beginning. That means before the creation. Through him, all things were made. Christ was part of that. In other words, there is nothing in this world that he is not part of. Now, why is this so important to John? Well, if you take, for example, compare it to Matthew. Matthew, the thing that they heard a lot was that Jesus couldn't be the Messiah because he was not the one that was foretold. And so what does Matthew do at every turn? He finds a reference of an Old Testament passage to say, see, this was all foretold. Everything that Christ went through was foretold. But John, not burdened by that at all, because he's not speaking to that audience. He's speaking to a much larger audience, an audience that covers the known world. And for them, he's trying to take their terms, their understanding, their world, and say, you're halfway there. Let me bring you all the way in so that you can understand this. So he talks about through him all things were created and nothing was made that has been made. And now we get these other big terms that we see throughout the book of the Gospel of John. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. So the big concepts of life, I am the way, the truth, and the life will come later, and that he is the light of the world. All those things come clearly in the Gospel of John. And then it says this, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, it's an interesting word that's used for overcome, because actually it has two meanings. One is that the darkness has not overcome it, that it remains, even though the darkness fights it. The other meaning of that Greek word, is that darkness has not understood it. And throughout the gospel, you will see both themes happening. That is, darkness rises up against the Son of God, who is the light of the world, and that all these people just don't quite understand it. And so that goes round and round. So it's a great prelude. Well, we go on. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. I mean, you think about it. In those first days, some of the first disciples, they were John's disciples. And Jesus is baptizing here, and John's baptizing over there, and John has a certain following, and, who is this Jesus? But obviously the story turns to him, and with famous words from John the Baptist, I must decrease while he must increase. Well, here he just sort of neatly takes care of it to say the whole action, everything that was happening, all the direction is pointing toward Jesus. Now we come back to that. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. In fact, it says, he was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. Isn't that an amazing idea? They just didn't recognize him. I remember a lady talking about going to a costume party. And she had just recently got divorced. And she's at this costume party with something on that covered her face. And she was talking about how she's there, and there's her ex over there, and he doesn't recognize her. And these other people don't know who she is. And in that painful kind of moment of feeling so isolated in her life and all, she's there among these people that should know and love her, but they don't recognize her. It's a poor analogy, but it's an interesting idea. In fact, he goes on to say that he came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. So now we have, in such a few verses, so much of the gospel. We have him before time, we have him creating this entire world, and then we have him coming down and becoming part of our life. And now his own didn't receive him. Now we have the word yet, verse 12. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believe in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. A couple of things I want to say about this. First of all, there is no virgin birth in the Gospel of John. But as I read these verses, I thought, there is a kind of virgin birth, and it's yours and mine. That is, we are born not out of human decision or husband's will, etc. We are spiritually born because of God. And one of the commentaries I read said, these two verses, here's verse 12. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. If you stop right there, the initiative, the decision to come to Christ is mine. Then he goes on to say, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. If you just take that part, it's all God. God's the one who made this decision. Nobody else did. God did. And I think that's so true of so much in life, that there is our action, but there is also God's greater action around us at all times, that God is really the first mover. I'm sure I've told it before, there's a little scene in Hind's Feet on High Places where where it's like they see the path up the hill. They find the way going to the high places. But as they look back, they realize that that path was obvious all along, that God had laid it out. And that's a lot like our life. Well, in this kind of image of salvation, He has given us the power, what it says, the power to become, the right to become children of God. But it is also He who has made that happen. Well, it says the Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. I love the idea that He pitched His tent among us. And we have seen His glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. That's one of the great phrases in all the Scripture, full of grace and truth. You know, if you were someone who was full of grace, I mean, it's a wonderful thing, is it not? But what that means, what it can mean, if you're full of grace, means that anything is okay. I will forgive. No matter what happens, it's okay. The other idea is being full of truth. Well, that's okay. That's a wonderful thing. I want to be full of truth, but it can be so hard and down pat that there's no yielding. Jesus has both grace and truth. It's kind of, if you've seen, what is it, Les Miserables, you know, there's the two leads. One is filled with all truth. The other one, quite a bit of grace. Well, Jesus brings both of those. He is full of grace and truth. And then the Word became flesh. 15. John testified concerning Him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me because He was before me.'" Out of His fullness, we have all received grace in place of grace already given. Other translations sometimes say grace upon grace. We have received this love from God. And now He has the final comparison. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is Himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made Him known. So it begins by saying, this is an even playing field. None of us have seen God, but Jesus, who is Himself God, is in closest relation with the Father, and He has made God known. So, if you will, the Christmas story for the Gospel of John is what I just read. No stables, no wise men, no gifts, no animals, no shepherds, no angels, none of that stuff. The Christmas story is, instead of the details, it pulls back 30,000 feet and says, this is what it is all about. It's about you choosing to walk with God. It's about Christ bringing light and life and bringing grace and truth. And it's about us saying what our goal is, what our desire is, what our heart's beat is that we want to see God. Well, you can see Him. You'll know Him best if you can learn from this man, Jesus. So that is the opening 18 verses of the Gospel of John. I'm sure I could go longer, and more learned people could go longer than that. But it is a great opening picture of what this book is going to be all about. Well, I hope that's enough for you for this Sunday school lesson. God bless you all, and I will see you in worship in just a little bit.